everyone, welcome back to Cottoverdi. My name's Annette and today is not a very sunny day here in South Buckinghamshire, but it is a gorgeous warm day at the beginning of June. This is the very beginning of June, and what I wanted to do today was show you all the roses that are currently in bloom in my garden. And I thought I'd just take you around, give you a walking tour. Now, not all the roses are out yet. I've got a lot of David Austins and they seem to be starting the rose display, and some of my roses are very young, so this will give you a really good idea of what the roses look like when they're quite young. And then others I've had for a little while and they're much larger shrubs, and I'm really enjoying them. I'm going to tell you what I like about each rose and whether they've got a fragrance and things like that, just to give you some, I don't know, inspiration maybe for roses you might want in your garden. But just come and join me and let's have a walk around all the roses that are currently flowering. So this is Princess Alexandra of Kent, and it is definitely one of my favourite roses. So the buds on this one start off with sort of this peachy tone to them, and the blooms are quite large. They have actually been larger than this sometimes. It's just a really soft, gentle pink with a little bit of maybe violet in it. It's a little mauvey pink. It's so pretty and really eye-catching. And I've got it planted right next to some gorgeous peonies. And then there's another one just over there. So we've got some campanula in the front and a baptisia and the peonies again. And then I think the pink goes really well with the silvery foliage of the evergreen behind. And then along here I've got 3 sceptred isle roses. So I've got some geraniums that are going over, and I've got some self-seeded Corinth or Cerinthe, and I think that goes really well with the roses, so I just let it self-seed every year. And I think the baptisia looks really pretty with the pale pink. It's a lovely deep blue colour. So the pale pink rose on the front is Sceptred Isle, and then the darker one at the back is Princess Alexandra of Kent. So Sceptred Isle has got a lovely sweet scent to it. It does tend to do this in the rain, but then I think all roses do. You just have to sort of open it up, but it's kind of almost peony-like in the centre, or a peony's rose-like. This is a rose called Little White Pet, and just look how many buds are waiting to pop. It is absolutely tiny. Let me show you how small. I can see a weed in there, but let's not worry about that today. But this is how small the roses are, but they've got absolutely loads of petals. They're quite flat. So they're a little bit flat, but they are so cute, and just so many. The buds start off pink, quite deep pink, and then they open out into these gorgeous white roses. They don't really have any discernible scent, but they're quite picture perfect when they're in full flower. So this rose is Sceptred Isle. I don't think Sceptred Isle has got a particularly strong fragrance, and I'm finding Sceptred Isle a little bit leggy. Like, it does this sort of thing where no matter how far I cut it back, it kind of leans over a lot. So it's not the neatest. Princess Alexandra of Kent is a lot neater, but I do love the soft, gentle pink colour. Not only do we have lovely pink flowers, but we've also got gorgeous pink buds to go with it too. So all the roses in the front garden here, Sceptred Isle, Princess Alexandra of Kent and Little White Pet, these are all in their 3rd year. So then, of course, if you've been here a while, you'll know that I have 3 James Galway roses climbing up the front of our house. And this is a very shady side of the house, and they cope really well here. And they are absolutely gorgeous. Again, they're covered in buds. They haven't quite come out yet, but there are quite a few that are out. I would describe James Galway as having a very sort of fresh rose fragrance. It's a very pretty fragrance, but it's not overly scented. James Galway is a flatter kind of rose, but still with loads and loads of petals, and it's got this sort of gorgeous ombre effect where it gets paler on the outside and it's deeper in the center. Again, it's a very soft pink. It looks brighter on camera than it actually is in real life. So some of the blooms will have a more peachy hue in the middle, which is really cute, but I just really love the way this rose fades. So this is one rose here on the front of our house. You can see that it's really quite large now. This has been in for a long time. So I'd say at least 5 years, maybe more than that. So these James Galway roses are on the northern side of our house. So they really only get sun in the very early morning, as we are now. By mid-morning, they're not really going to get a lot of sunshine. In fact, they really only get sun during the summer months, so sort of from June onwards, because any other time of the year, the sun just doesn't get up high enough to get over the roofs to shine on here. And they are doing really well. I mean, there aren't loads of flowers at the moment, but it's very early June, and by the end of June, you've seen from all the buds that it will be in full flower, and they cope really well with the shade. So I think they're a fantastic climbing rose for the shade if you like something that's pink. It is pretty pink. So we have got a Madame Alfred Carrier, and Monty Don from God as well, BBC, recommended Madame Alfred Carrier for a shady wall, and his looks wonderful, but our Madame Alfred Carrier really doesn't flower well. It's not coping with the shady wall that it's planted on, so I never show it because it kind of looks really scraggly and unhappy. So I may have to call David Austin and get some advice on what to do about that rose, and maybe I might have to move it. It's huge, it's absolutely huge, but it just doesn't have particularly good flowers. I think there are 1 or 2 blooms at the moment. Let me show you those. So this is Madame Alfred Carrier, and it's really only flowered at the top. There aren't very many buds, and it does this sort of thing where it's very, very leggy and floppy. The only flowers I've got are right up at the top, up here, so I can't even appreciate them. And they're kind of messy looking roses. Like, it's not a particularly neat cup shape or anything like that. I'm not in love with it. So what we may have to do with this rose is, when we prune it next time, is we're going to have to cut it right back down so that we can train the branches in a more horizontal fashion, because a lot of the branches, even though they're going in like a fan shape, they're not as horizontal as, for instance, I've got the James Galway rose. So perhaps that is the problem that we've got here, why it's only blooming at the top, is that the fan shape just isn't working, and we really need to have a very much more horizontal than vertical growth habit. So I think by cutting it, giving it a really hard prune, cutting it right back, and then starting to train the really whippy growths horizontally, I think that might help in the future. So I don't want to recommend this rose at the moment, and I'm not going to sing its praises because I'm struggling to make it happy in my garden. That's not that it's a bad rose, it's just that I just haven't done particularly well with this one. This is a rose called New Dawn. This is possibly the oldest rose that we have in this garden, so it may have been here maybe 8 or 9 years, something like that. It's one of the first roses I planted. It's incredibly pale pink. It's not as floriferous as I'd like it to be, and I don't know whether it's where I've planted it, but it does seem to be prone to getting leaf spot and things like that. But it is a very pretty rose. It's a classic rose shape. It's just a lovely soft colour. So this is where I've got it growing, and it's growing up the wall here. I have not trained this rose very well, and it's kind of going over the top here, over this sort of semi-pergola, and dangling on the other side, which is really nice. This is a west-facing wall, and it has got loads and loads of buds on it at the moment, so maybe I'll get a really good display this year. Right next to it, I've got my 3 Harlow Carr roses, and I cannot tell you how many buds are on these roses waiting to pop open. I mean, just look at that. Oh, actually I can see some roses. There are some roses over here. Let's go round. They must have opened overnight. So the Harlow Carr here is planted with some Sweet William, and it is one of my all-time favourite roses, and the reason is because the scent is incredible. I've got it planted just outside my kitchen, so every time I pop out into the garden I walk past it and it just wafts and wafts of gorgeous scent. Again, these aren't heavily cupped, they're kind of more flattish, but they've got loads and loads of petals, and you can see just how many roses I'm going to have. So many buds. The only thing I would say about this rose is that it is definitely one of the prickliest roses in my garden. I'd say in about a week's time I'm going to have the most incredible display here. So now we're moving on to what I call the rose arch, and you will have seen me tying these roses in the other day. So on either side I've got a Claire Austin closest to us and Generous Gardener further on, and then just behind it on either side I've got a Boscobel. Let me show you these in flower. So this one here is Claire Austin. I mean, obviously this bud isn't fully open yet, but it is a really, really gentle creamy colour. The edges of the petals are kind of tipped apricot-y pink. Ever so sweet. So look how full these roses are. They're absolutely jam-packed with petals. Completely full. I mean, that's packed really, really tightly. Absolutely gorgeous bloom. Again, this rose is absolutely full of buds, ready to pop. This one here is the Generous Gardener. Not quite as tightly packed, but still really pretty. Again, another lovely deep rose. Such a gentle, soft pink colour. These are the buds on the Generous Gardener. Aren't they the most perfect shape? And they've got this just lovely coloration to them. I think they're incredibly attractive. And again, it's just such a full rose. Look at that, it's so pretty. Around the other side of the arch I've got just a mixture of ranunculus that I've planted from previous years. None of them are labelled, so I don't know which varieties they are, but there's just a mixture of pink colours. So I've got some darker ones, some lovely pale ones, these are probably Chamello, and then some much darker ones here. Let me chop that off. So around the other side of this side of the arch, the Boscobel is in full flower. Look how enormous these blooms are. So again, this is about the same size as Princess Alexandra of Kent. Just huge, but this is a completely different pink colour. So this is more sort of pale Barbie pink is how I would describe it, with little hints of peach and apricot. So I've got them planted with some Sweet William in the background. I would say that they are faintly scented. They don't seem to be overly scented. And the leaves on Boscobel seem to be a duller green, so they're not as shiny as, for instance, the leaves on the Generous Gardener are super shiny looking leaves. I just think they look really bright. Whereas the leaves on Boscobel are the same colour but a bit duller. They've kind of got a silvery hue to them. But that is an incredibly pretty rose. So moving round to this new Obelisk bed, this rose here is called Comte de Chambord. And I have had problems with this rose in the past. It just hasn't been very healthy. And in fact, I can see that leaf cutters have been at it. But I think I'm going to get lots of lovely roses this year. I think it's a lot happier because we've done a lot of weeding in this bed, and I did prune it. Like I properly took to it this year, where I pruned it quite hard. And Comte de Chambord is a really lovely, rich, deep pink colour. I mean, look at the colour of those buds. And I think it's looking incredibly cute next to the alliums, which are completely covered in bees. So Comme de Chambord will get taller with time. So my blush noisette roses that we planted a couple of weeks ago are not flowering, but they do have a few buds on them. So I'm hoping that we do get some flowers this year, even though they are quite new. And then directly behind that, I have got 3 Eustacia Vi. Now this is a gorgeous, gorgeous rose. Again, I think this is going to be an incredible year for roses because I have so many buds. I think Eustacia Vi has got the most beautiful flowers because they're so fluffy and open and pink. They're quite flat, so they're not deeply cupped, but they just have this lovely apricot-y, peachy tinge to them. They're so pretty. So this plant in the foreground with these gorgeous little bells is called a Zenobia. Ever so delicate and incredibly pretty. But right behind it is a lovely rose. And this rose is called Cream Abundance. So this isn't a David Austin rose, but I do think it's incredibly pretty. It's showing up a little bit more apricot on the screen, but actually it's not quite as apricot-y as that. In real life, it's very pale. I think it's a really nice shape. It's medium-sized, I would say. So at the moment, I would say that that is not a very highly scented rose. And it is getting a little bit of black spot on the leaves. So I'm a bit worried about that. It also just doesn't have as many buds as some of my other roses. So over here, I'm sorry about the sound of the lawnmower going in the background. I can't do anything about that. My neighbour's mowing the lawn. So over here, this is my Queen of Sweden bed, and I call it that because I've got 6 Queen of Sweden roses, and I just think they are going to look spectacular when they're all in flower at the same time. This is such an upright rose. It really is brilliant. It works really well as a hedge. It just works well in the borders generally because the roses just face upwards. And again, they're lovely deep cups to the roses. They're not as big as some of the others, but they do have like a nice variation in shading. So, you know, you have the pink one with slightly, I'd say, tangerine colour on the inside. And then as they mature, they just become paler. And I would describe that as a light rose fragrance. So it's important to bear in mind if you're planning your borders, the buds do actually affect your colour scheme, and the buds on Queen of Sweden are very much in the sort of apricot-y tones, more orange than a lot of the other roses that I grow. This rose here is called Chandos Beauty, and it's planted right next to the pergola that's going to have lots of roses on it. But this is a very much more of an apricot tone to it. Peachy apricot, probably more peach, to be honest with you. So it's definitely not in the cream or pink range, and I really like that because it's a bit different for me. Chandos Beauty is definitely one of the biggest roses in my garden. This is just the buds, and it's like half the size of my hand already. They're absolutely huge, voluptuous, delicious roses. I don't know how to describe that pink colour. It's definitely a pinky apricot. So as the buds open, they do turn a little bit more cream, but I think this is such a pretty colour. It goes really well with purples and blues, and I think it's stunning. So I've got some purple salvia planted in amongst it. It's absolutely tiny at the moment, but I'm hoping that they will grow, and then we'll have a lovely purple contrast. This one is called Mirage Deep Purple. This rose is called Litchfield Angel. It's not in flower yet, but I have got loads of buds. And the bud has got like a really nice sort of pink striation to it. I think that's quite pretty. This little rose is a David Austin called Lady Salisbury. Again, it's another lovely, pretty pink colour. This one's been munched, I think, by a snail or something. but I've definitely got some more buds coming. This rose here is called Tranquility. It's another David Austin. Absolutely gorgeous. It's in tight bud at the moment, so we'll come back when the flowers are a bit more open. I'll show you what they look like. Tranquility is one of the most perfect cream coloured roses, and it's normally super healthy. This rose here in amongst the weeds is called Gertrude Jekyll. We really need to move this rose, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like. It's very much on a par with James Galway, but I would say it's more of the Barbie pink than James Galway. I find James Galway a slightly more gentle pink colour. This has possibly got more of the magenta in it. The one thing I would say about this rose is it smells heavenly. So it is more highly scented than my James Galway roses. Still a super pretty rose. It really does smell wonderful. I can't really show you this rose here, but it's called Sweet Honey, and it's got very, very vivid orange buds. So do bear that in mind if you're buying Sweet Honey, that it will need to cope with orange tones. I think it looks quite good with my Physocarpus 9-bark in the background, so that yellow colour really highlights it. I've also got some Verbascum here that is a really nice sort of peachy tone that goes with the orange buds, so I think that's working quite well. So this rose that we can see in the background here is Coco Loco, which is the most incredible buff coffee coloured rose. It is so pretty. It looks pretty orange here though, doesn't it? And I don't know whether that's because the purple iris is setting it off, or whether the very pink ranunculus are making it look more orange. Let's take a closer look. I think this rose is incredible. It is delicious. It has little tinges of purpley mauve mixed in with that sort of very light cafe au lait colour. It is perfect. It's very unusual. I've never seen anything like it. This is what the bud looks like. You can see more of the sort of orangey tone on the outside there mixed with pinks. I have actually got another Coco Loco, so I've got one here and then one just behind here. You can see it budding up. I was supposed to have a third, but it definitely didn't make it through the winter, so I need to replace that because I really do want 3 of them here, and I think they're going to look so good, especially with all the purple irises and other colours that I've got here to complement it. And there's a really lovely wallflower over here that's kind of got the purple and apricot tones to it, and I think that that is really helpful. In fact, I wish I'd planted some a little bit closer. I may have to move them. This rose here is called Chicago Peace. Look at the intensity of that bud. That is incredible. Now, Chicago Peace is a really wonderful rose, and I really did enjoy this last year. This rose here is called Festive Jewel, and it was one of the first to flower in the garden this year. It's such a pretty rose. It does exactly what I want it to do. In the early summer, it just really brightens up the garden. It's so beautiful. A lot of these particular buds have gone over, so I just need to deadhead them. But there is one that I can show you that is still in flower. The buds on Festive Jewel are very red. This rose is Susan Daniel, and it's not quite in flower yet, but I wanted to show it to you because it's such a pretty peachy apricot colour. And I think it just looks really nice with the purple leaves behind it. So here we can see the 2 Desdemona standard roses that we've got planted along the corridor bed. And considering it's their first year, I think they're looking pretty good. There aren't too many buds, but you know, I feel like the first year roses really do take time to settle in. They're obviously very young plants. Desdemona is a very pretty rose. The flowers are smaller than I was expecting, and also they were a little bit droopier than I was expecting, so not quite as upright. I'm not sure whether it's the perfect rose as a standard rose, but this is how David Austin sells it, so I'm going to give it time. You should see how it beds in. I can see some dying back going on. I didn't prune this rose, this is how it came to me, so it definitely needs a little bit of care and attention. But that's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed strolling around the garden, having a look at the roses and seeing how exciting it is that even more roses are about to bloom. I can't wait to show you what they look like in the coming weeks, so do subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see how the roses are looking in the future. I really hope you've enjoyed this video today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you all next time.